name's Masha and today I'm doing the pattern roulette challenge. I have a bunch of my to-dos on this wheel and we're gonna spin the wheel and do 3 random bracelets off of my to-dos. A lot of these have actually been on my to-do list for literal years, so this is probably the best chance of ever getting made. So that's what we're gonna do today. I did another video like this last year. I'll leave that linked in the card and in the description if you want to check that out. But let's get into this one. So here are all the pattern numbers in case you're curious which ones were on this list. I chose these off my to-dos. I think there's a little bit more alpha bracelets than there are normal patterns, just because that's what I'm in the mood for a little bit more. But both of the types are on there and let's see what we get. I'm gonna roll this with you. Alright, the first one is this pattern number. I'll leave all the patterns linked in the description as well. Let's have a look which one this is. 3, 4, 7, 5, 7. I'm actually very happy that this one came up. This is the case of a bracelet being in my to-dos for literal years. I think it's been close to like 5 years at this point that this pattern has been in there, or at least like different variations of it. I really like the flower here and there's a bunch of different patterns with that flower. I've always wanted to make one for literal years. I have several versions of patterns with that flower in my to-dos and I somehow have never created it. So let's do it. Let's make this bracelet. I decided to film the entire process of me making this bracelet while I'm at it, and I'm gonna continue doing that for the rest of the bracelets here. So all of these bracelets are also in Not With Me format where you can watch me create the entire thing in one go. The Not With Me for this one is already posted and I'll leave that linked in the description. This bracelet is definitely going to take a while. It's quite big. It's got 19 base strings. I also added a couple of rows at the top. I realized that with my knotting tension for alpha bracelets, I needed pattern to be about 90 rows in length for it to be around 15, 16 centimeters, which is what I want to go for. So I added 10 rows at the start and I'm also going to add 10 rows at the bottom because this pattern was only 70 rows. But yeah, I realize I'm not actually showing much because it's taped off. I'm filming this one for a Not With Me. But I got all of this done in one sitting. I think this took about an hour and a half, so this one is gonna take me a while. I do really love how the colors look though. These colors go really, really well together. It's turning out beautifully. I'm gonna go make more. The flower in the center is done and it's turning out so beautifully. I'm very happy with how this is turning out and I'm very happy with the colors as well. Though I must say I'm happy that I finished with the flower because there was a lot of color switches at one point. So now I've just got to repeat what I did here over on this side. Should take me another few hours and then I'll be done. And here's how the flower turned out. This bracelet was a really fun one to make. It took about 5.5 hours to knot, and I think it turned out really pretty. I'm glad I finally made this bracelet. It was definitely on my to-dos for an extremely long time. I really like the colors in this as well, especially because I've had some issues with colors in the past. I did another flower-related bracelet recently, which was the roses bracelet, and I wasn't too happy with how the colors turned out in that one. And then the ladybug bracelet that I did as well. Overall, I was really happy with that one, but the color for the shadow didn't quite work out the way that I wanted to. So after having a couple of bracelets where I wasn't too happy with the colors, it's very refreshing to have one where I'm really happy with the colors actually. One thing though, I actually wanted to have a different color in the background. Instead of white, I wanted it to be sort of like a pale yellow, kind of like a pastel color. I thought it would look really well here. I thought it would complement the pattern quite well, but I didn't have enough of that color. I've been running into this problem more and more recently where I just don't have enough of the string that I want. I had about 1 skein of it and I wasn't sure if that was going to be enough for the full bracelet, so I decided not to risk it and just went with white. I can't say I regret it much. It still looks really beautiful, but I would have wanted to see this one with a pastel color. Let's move on to the next one. Time to pick out number 2. Alright, let's have a look. Alright, this is a classic. This is a pattern that's been around for so long. It has over 1,000 likes on Bracelet Book, which isn't something you normally see. Usually you see like a couple hundred maybe per pattern. So this one is a really, really popular pattern and I've never made it. It's actually a recent to-do. I put this in my to-dos list probably literally yesterday, I think. Because I was looking for something summery. I want to make some kind of like flowery, summery, spring type of bracelet. So that's why that was in there. And yeah, that's one of the quickest bracelets I've ever made because I literally just added that. So let's get to it. This bracelet is actually going by really quickly. There's only 10 bass strings on this, so it's not really that big. And also there's only 3 colors, so it's genuinely going by super fast. But here I need to rearrange it in order to continue filming. I also want to cut some of the strings off, just because they're getting annoying, like some of these strings that I replaced. Cut these off, and then some of these strings that I added as well I like to cut off while I'm making the bracelet, because there's just a lot of strings, otherwise it gets messy. But yeah, it's looking cute. It's going pretty easily actually. So let's shift it down. Oh, I also added like 10 rows to it because I thought that it would be too short otherwise. So it's a little bit longer than the pattern. It's always hard with these not with me's to kind of get the tape in the exact position that it was before and to make sure that it's still centered and it still looks the same way, because it never does. Spoiler alert. I'm always like fidgeting with the camera angle to make sure that like, okay, does this look about what it looked like? I think so, so I'm gonna go with it. Also, we're really close to the edge of my desk here, which is like just under there. So I think next time I'm gonna have to pull the entire bracelet up to rearrange the shot. Let's continue. And here we are with the completed bracelet. As I said, this pattern is an absolute classic. I've seen this around so much, and I'm happy to finally be part of the trend. I'm actually surprised I've never made this one before, just because it's so popular. This was really easy. It's quite thin, there's only 3 colors, there's not a lot of color switches per row. Time flew by with this one, and I had a lot of fun, so I'm really glad that this one came up in this challenge. I don't think I would have picked this one otherwise, honestly. I don't know, I just feel like there's always something else to make, and I tend to go for more complex patterns and bigger patterns, but this was so much fun. I'm glad I made it. Time to move on to the next one. All right, 2 bracelets down, let's pick out our final bracelet for today. All right, this pattern. Oh, I was kind of hoping this one wouldn't come up. I was hoping this one wouldn't come up, and I'll explain why. I put it in as like a challenge to myself that like, if it did come up, I'll do this. Basically, I'm actually so annoyed that this came up because I had so many other patterns on there. It's also funny how not a single one was a normal pattern. I did say that there were more alphas, but there was still like a significant amount of normal patterns there. Anyway, so the reason I didn't want this one to come up is because I actually really want to make a collection of these. So there's a bunch of different patterns by this creator, and this being one of them. There's a lot of different fruits that are associated with like a bunch of different colors. Obviously this one, the blueberries go with purple. There's like strawberries that are pink, oranges that are orange, whatever. There's a whole range of these patterns, and I really like them, and I really want to make a collection of them and do like maybe a not with me video, but in which I make the entire collection, because these are really small. Like the majority of these is just background rows, because you only really have that like tiny bit of the fruit, and then the rest is just background rows. So that's what I wanted to do, but I also really don't want to do that because there's like 7 of them? That's a lot of bracelets, and if I'm gonna make one, I want to make all of them. So I was like, you know what, if it comes up during the pattern roulette, I'll make it, and I'll make the entire collection of them. Not in this video, but I will eventually, right? And I was like, surely it's not gonna, because I kind of didn't want to do that. That's a lot of commitment, you know, that's a lot of effort. So I guess I'm doing that. But all right, before I actually get started with the entire collection, let's first make this one bracelet, and then further down the line, I'll make the entire collection, maybe. Let's get to it. As soon as I sat down to make this bracelet, I realized that I have a problem. I did not have the strings to make this bracelet. And I must say that it's a very unusual problem for me to have, because I have a lot of strings. I very specifically collected enough strings so that I don't encounter this issue. But because I typically buy my strings in Russia, where it is very cheap for me to do so, and I haven't been to Russia in like 8 months, I'm running low for the first time in years. And so I had to go out and actually buy strings in London. And I absolutely hate doing that, and you will see why. Strings in London are extremely expensive. I think I pay something like 4 or 5 times as much as I would have paid for the same thing in Russia. Granted, the strings I buy in Russia are a different brand, but they're the same 100% cotton string in the same length, in similar-ish colors, that I don't see why there would be such a difference. But nonetheless, I picked out all the patterns that I wanted to do for this collection, and I went out and I bought some strings for them. I only really bought strings specifically for this bracelet collection because I am actually going to Russia really soon, so I will be able to stock up soon. But my god, even that was a challenge in itself. It took me a really, really long time to pick out the strings. You would think that going into a store and just like being able to pick out whatever you want while also looking at the pattern directly and seeing what colors you need, you'd think that that would be really easy, but it's not. It's not easy in general, but it's also not easy when you're trying to make a collection where all of the patterns, you want all of them to have a similar vibe. So you want the tone of the colors to match. You maybe want all the greens to be the same throughout the bracelets and so on. So it actually genuinely took me a really long time. And while I'm only going to be showing you the blueberry bracelet here, I still had to think about the other bracelets because I was planning on making them in the future. But I got all my strings. I paid a ridiculous amount of money for it, which I'm still annoyed by. I got all the strings and I finally sat down to make the bracelet. And you know what? This bracelet was an absolute blast. As I said, it's actually really easy to do because the beginning and the end of it are pretty much just empty rows. You only really need to do the thing in the middle. Though there was a lot of color changes with that, so it did take some time and it was a little bit of a mess. But it turned out fine altogether. I filmed the entire thing as well. And I also already started making the other patterns in this collection, so there will be a video coming out with all of these at some point. But here is how the bracelet turned out. It's absolutely gorgeous. I am so glad I started with this one as well because I think that this is my favorite out of the entire collection, which is kind of why I added it to the roulette to begin with, to be honest. But I really love the purple. I like how the colors look together, and I also really like how it looks in combination with all the other bracelets, but you're gonna have to wait to see that. And that's gonna be it for today. I hope you enjoyed today's video. For me, it was definitely a lot of fun to film. I really enjoy doing these pattern roulette videos. I think I'm gonna do more of these in the future because it definitely allows me to sort of go outside of what I typically do. Obviously, I'm still the one who put in the patterns into the roulette, but I do try to put patterns in there that have just been sitting for ages on my list that I just never got around to doing. Even in the first video that I did, which I'll leave linked in the card and in the description if you wanna watch that as well, I made bracelets that were in my to-dos for years on that. So this is definitely a great way for bracelets to get finished. So I'm most likely going to be doing another one of these in the future, but let me know your thoughts if you enjoy these videos. And let me know if there's any patterns that have been on your to-do list for ages and ages. If so, I recommend trying one of these. My book, The Beginner's Guide to Friendship Bracelets, is out worldwide, and it's a collection of photo tutorials aimed at beginners. You can buy it wherever you typically buy books, and there's also a direct purchase link in the description in case you want to use that. Before I go, I also want to give a shout out to my patrons and especially my top supporters. Thank you so much. It is with your support that I'm able to create the videos that I do. And if you also want to support the work that I do on this channel, the link to my Patreon is in the description. But in any case, I really hope you enjoyed today's fun, weird video, and I will see you in my next one. Bye!